Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today, Literacy and Learning Software Tools to Support All. My name is Kira Harakel, and I'm a member of the Texthelp marketing team, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. We have a great presentation lined up today, but before we get started, I just have a couple of small housekeeping items. Today's session is in listen-only mode, but we'd love to hear from you and answer your questions. Throughout the session, feel free to type in the questions chat box of the GoToWebinar control panel. I'll be monitoring it throughout the session, and we'll also have a couple of opportunities to address questions with the presenters, and I'll also do my best to reply to others directly in the chat box. So feel free to test out the chat box now, just say hello, or let us know where you're joining from today. I also wanted to let you know that the session today will be recorded. You'll receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a link to the recording as well as some additional resources. And if you'd like a copy of the slides to follow along with the presentation or take some notes, you can type in the URL displayed on the screen. It's text.help/Texas Toolkit, and that is case sensitive. So when you're typing that in, just be careful of that. While you're opening the slides, I also wanted to announce we have a fun contest today. We're giving away one full conference pass to the Texas Computer Education Association Conference, also known as TCEA, being held in February. All you have to do is stay on until the end of the webinar and we'll pick a lucky winner. So let's get the session started. We have two amazing presenters with us today. First is Kay Tepera, who is a regional sales director covering Texas and Oklahoma. She also holds a master's in education and before joining Texthelp worked as a classroom teacher and tech coordinator. Kay is joined by Jason Carroll, who is the director of product management at Texthelp. Jason oversees the updates and releases to all of Texthelp's literacy and STEM solutions. Prior to Texthelp, Jason was an education technology consultant in the state of Kentucky for nearly a decade. So you're in great hands today. And without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and hand this off to Kay.
Hey everyone, welcome and thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. I am the rep here in Texas and happy to help you at the end of the webinar or even going forward with any of your questions or any of the interest you may have in products. At the end of the presentation today, we do have a really short survey for you, so stay tuned for that at the very end. But let me go ahead and turn it over to Jason, and without further ado, we'll let him get started talking about today's topic.
Okay, thank you, Kay. Right, so guys, I have a lot to cover in a short amount of time, so I'm going to do my best. And as you've already heard, you'll get a copy of the recording that you can review at any time. And I'm going with the assumption that you guys can hear me okay. If not, just let me know. So I'm going to start out by depressing everyone with some stats, but then things are going to get better, so stick with me. I don't think this will be a shocker to many on here that there are lots of students in the U.S. today. Texas is not an exclusion to this. That struggling learners, and with reading, writing, mathematics, a lot of different areas. So some stats to back that up. The nation's report card, I look at that quite often. Every couple of years it comes out and it lets us know, how the U.S. is doing, but it also breaks it down by states. And they're all pretty similar, but we know that over 60%, so nearly 2/3 of students in 4th grade and 8th grade, they score below proficient in reading. When we say below proficient, we're talking about making sense out of a grade level textbook. So that's a troubling stat. And unfortunately, this hasn't changed much. This stat has been similar for the last 20 years, continues to be that way. So we need to look at what we can do to help that. It gets even worse when you get to writing. Not surprisingly, students that struggle with reading also struggle with writing, and then some. Only 24%, so less than a quarter of students in grades 8 and 12 score proficient in writing. That comes from the same nation report card that we've looked at there. And then when you get into mathematics, it's not much better. Again, probably not surprisingly, if you look at 4th and 8th graders there, again, over 60% of each score below proficient in math. So we got work to do. The good news is that technology can help. Here's an example, and if you've seen me present before, I've probably used it. It's just the best one that I have, but it's just kind of a before and after example of a student that was using some software support. So this is the before example. Really difficult to read, not a lot of punctuation going on, or paragraph breaks, or sentence breaks, or a lot of things really. So this is the before, and then this is the same student, and in this case, it's it's 2 days later, same student writing, just after being handed over some tools to use to help out, and we have this. So we have nearly two nice pages, paragraph indentions, punctuations, even a nice drawing at the end. And this all happened through the help of technology. Now, we'll get into what that technology is. There's all kinds of it that can help with reading and writing. But that does take us into Texthelp and what we do at Texthelp. Both Kay, Kira, and I work at Texthelp. As Kira said, I work on the product side of things. And Texthelp has several products. Specifically in education, really, if you're familiar with Texthelp, our flagship product that's been around for many years, Texthelp's been around for over 20 years, believe it or not, but is Read and Write. And in the past, we had Read and Write Gold, you may be familiar with. But now Read and Write covers Read and Write for Google Chrome, which I'll be showing mostly today. But when you have access to Read and Write, you have access to Read and Write for Google, you have Read and Write for Windows, and Read and Write for Mac, and Read and Write for iPads and Android. So there's a lot of versions there that you have access to whenever you use Read and Write. Equatio is our newest, new-ish, I should say, math product. It has been out for a couple of years now. I'll briefly go over that. WriteQ is our new writing tool. We're doing some exciting things there. Fluency Tutor is, as you would think, helps students become fluent readers. And SnapBurter is an add-on to Read and Write that helps make documents accessible. I am going to do my best to get through Read and Write, Equatio, WriteQ, and Fluency Tutor today. I'm going to go over the basics, show you a quick live demo, cross our fingers everything goes well with that, and then I will but you guys are going to have access to this and our information as well to follow up with after. And you'll also get an email at the end of this that has access to all kinds of other information. So without any other delays, let's start with Read and Write. Read and Write is, so prior to being, Kira mentioned this, but prior to being at Texthelp, I've been at Texthelp for, it's going to be 8 years here really soon. And prior to that, I was an educational technology consultant, really assistive technology more than anything in the state of Kentucky. I did that for nearly 10 years, worked with hundreds of schools, thousands of students, and we were always looking at one thing or another to help students. And really, most of the time, the most frequent reason I'd be called in would be for reading and writing disabilities, things like that. And Read and Write is nice because it takes all those things and puts it into one nice toolbar that you can use. So you're going to have things like text-to-speech and word prediction. These are the kind of tools that I mentioned with the student that I showed earlier, the before and after pictures. These are the type of tools that students can use to help them read and write. And a lot of times it helps very quickly as well. It also works in a lot of different platforms. It's not a software application that you have to put a lot of stuff into and not complicated to learn. It's just a toolbar that works in whatever environment you're already working in. So if you're on the web or you're in a PDF document or you're in a Google Doc or a Microsoft Word doc or a learning management system, Read and Write just works. And it's there for students when they need it. If you're not familiar with it at all, I'm showing you this in Google Docs. I'm just going to do a couple of screenshots here, and then I'm going to pop over to show you a live demo of this. But it's just, it's just a little icon that's at the top of the screen. It stays kind of tucked away, and it's just there as a puzzle piece. The students can click on when they need it. When this happens, you're going to have access to a toolbar. That toolbar is going to do things like read text out loud. It's got talking dictionaries and picture dictionaries, and all this stuff is just built in. One of the things that we really noticed whenever we released the Google version of Read and Write is discoverability. If I go back just a couple of screens here, now we've implemented this across products, but having that little tab there that's just visible really increases the likelihood that students will use it, especially when they need it most. We saw a huge jump in this whenever we released it, and a lot of the reason is students don't have to be reminded, oh yeah, I need to go open the program and go to Start and All Programs and Settings and kind of all down that whole route in order to open it. Now it's just there, sitting there when they need it. So that's really important definitely for Read and Write, but any software you use, it needs to be discoverable by the students that use it most. So if I move on ahead, then again, there's a translator, there's word prediction, all these sort of things are built in. The best thing for me to do is just go out of slideshow mode here and show you guys this. So I'm going to just a Google Doc here, and the very basic thing, it's a toolbar. As you can see, I've got a play button here on the toolbar. I hit play. Now, I don't know if that sound came through or not because I am using kind of an earbud thing here, but hopefully at a minimum you could see that it would highlight, and it's called dual color highlighting. So the nice thing is that it's going to highlight the sentence, and then it's going to highlight each individual word as it's read aloud. So it does that. If I'm not sure what a word is, I can click on it, And as mentioned before, there's a dictionary. All the definitions can be read aloud. There's a picture dictionary. You can have all these things open at the same time and even move around to other words while it's open to get updated definitions and picture definitions and things like that. One of the nice features for writing is going to be word prediction. If I just have a space here and turn on prediction, you can see it gives me some starter words. If I type a capital T, it's going to give me words that start with a capital T. And it even does interesting things like if I were to type FO, for example, it gives me words that starts with FO, but you can also see it gives me words that start with PH because that's a common phonetic issue that students would experience, especially if you're working with English language learners. The English language is complicated. Like, why would the letter F and then the letters PH make the same sound, right? So things like word prediction can help. We know that students that, I should say struggling writers that use word prediction, we know that they write twice as much and they don't make any spelling errors. So it is a nice and I think underused feature that's in Read and Write that students can be using for sure. Other things that we have, just going across the toolbar as quickly as possible. I've got my little timer here that I'm trying to keep an eye on. The highlighting tools. So if I were to go through and make some highlights, I can do this a couple of different ways. One way here would be, let's say that I just want to highlight a few key vocabulary words. We have a vocabulary list builder. We also have a way to collect highlights. So the first one I'll show you is the vocabulary list builder. What that's going to do is it's just going to take the words that I've highlighted and it's going to create a nice little vocabulary list for me. And it's going to use some of the things you've already seen. It gives me the word, it gives me the definitions, it gives me the symbol, meaning the picture that goes along with it. It's going to give me an editable notes area as well that I can do. So I can, if I'm an educator, I can create this and share it with a student, clean it up all I would like and that sort of thing. But B, if I'm a student, I can just go and look for words and create my own vocabulary list. So it's a really nice built-in feature that you can use again in Google Docs or the web or Word or a PDF file, wherever it is you're at. The other one was collect highlights, which is basically the same thing. It's used more on the web. You can use it anywhere, but it allows you to do the same thing, basically highlight information, but then it will collect those highlights for you in another document. So imagine being out on the web and doing research on volcanoes or any topic you can imagine, and you can make highlights, collect those highlights, and it'll even give you the source where you got those from. So nice research and productivity feature built in. I should also mention one of our newest features is going to be Check It. So Check It is our grammar and punctuation spelling tool. So here I have a document. You can see Google's already outlined or underlined a lot of these errors that are here for me to correct. But if I want to turn Check It on, basically what will happen, sorry, I've loaded this before I had the extension. Just refresh it real quick. So once I have a document open and I have Read and Write, all things are never fast whenever I'm in live demo mode here. There we go. Check It is on. So now you can see that I can go in and it's going to outline errors that Google caught. Now it does underline some of the same ones that Google had, but it does that plus more. So it's going to do things as you would think. So this, for example, it's saying, hey, probably could use a comma there. This is a spelling error. So in those examples, it'll allow you to go and change it. Sometimes you'll find maybe a proper noun that is underlined and shouldn't be. You can add that to a custom dictionary or you can ignore it. You can see it does the spelling, it's going to do the grammar, and it works while you type, which is nice. There's an example down here I like to use. It says, I left my suitcase in the train station for 5 hours. And it's telling me that 5 is incorrect, which that is right, it is incorrect. But it doesn't catch that, that I've got the wrong version of 4 here. But if I would go and correct 5, now you see it automatically goes and underlines 4 because it understands now that that's corrected. Okay, well that's the wrong version of 4. So it's basically just a nice Grammarly-like tool that you have, and it's just another tool that's built into Read and Write. So you're going to get an email with more information about Read and Write that you can see and learn about. You can see there's all kinds of features over here. We've only scratched the surface. I'm showing this to you in Google Docs. It's going to work out on web pages. It's going to work in PDF files and several other places as well. So if I just open up the slideshow and go back to where we started here. Right, the PDF reader, I had mentioned that. So if you have PDFs that you already use, or if you want to make a PDF, we even have I'd mentioned Snapburger, where you can just take a picture of a worksheet and turn it into an accessible PDF. But if you have PDFs, Read and Write has a complete PDF reader built in. Not only can you view PDFs as you'd expect, but you can have those read aloud. You can make highlights. You can have it does collaborative discussions. You can do collaboration on it and make notes. You can do annotations on it if you have worksheets. The vocabulary list that I mentioned. All this stuff is just comes as part of Read and Write that you have. So if you have PDF files, you'll definitely want to check out the PDF reader portion of Read and Write. It's almost a whole separate program that is really just part of Read and Write. That's the PDF reader. And then I didn't want to go too far without mentioning Read and Write for assessments. So there are a lot of pieces of Read and Write. You have Read and Write for Google or Windows, whichever version you have, which is the toolbar. You have the PDF reader that's part of that. We have an EPUB reader as well if you're using EPUB documents that Read and Write will work with. And then we also have Read and Write for assessments. So if you're in Texas, Kay may talk about this a little bit later, but I know you guys have the STAR assessment. So basically, Read and Write for assessments is a way that you can have a safe, secure area that you can use to respond to questions on your end of the year assessment. Without getting too far into details, if you guys have questions on this, and I'm sure we can include some of this in the email we send out, but please feel free to reach out, or we can discuss those here when we have a moment later on. But the idea is it's its own locked down supported writing environment. You can choose what accommodation students can use. If you're using Chromebooks, you can run it in kiosk mode, and so you can do things like only allow word prediction. In the case of word prediction, for example, predict ahead is turned off, which would be a requirement of state testing. It's got speech input, like the dictation piece. So if students have dictation as an accommodation, you can use that as well. It's got speech, as you would expect, and the other tools. But you can turn all these things on or off depending on what the student needs, and use that for your testing scenarios there. So that's Read and Write, and it's really just because of time, and because this is going to be a recording that other people are going to use, we're going to save those questions for the end. So if you have them, you can pop them in there. Kira and Kay can respond to the ones that they see, but we'll have a little bit of time here at the end as well. Fluency Tutor, I apologize, I'm going to fly through this, but I do want you to know a little bit about Fluency Tutor. Fluency Tutor is a Google app instead of an extension, although there is an extension that comes with it for some pieces. The idea is it's going to support struggling readers and English language learners. Really, it's idea for students that are young, that are learning to read. So think your, K through 3, K through 4 crowd, and then it's great for older students that are struggling or maybe English language learners. It definitely helps improve confidence. It's made for Google. It integrates with Google Drive and Google Classroom. It allows for real-time teacher and student feedback. The idea behind Fluency Tutor, if you're familiar with how you would teach fluency to younger students, you do running records where students have something that they read and the teacher lets them read for 1 minute, and they mark the errors and types of errors that they make, and they do a progress report, and they see the improvement over time. This is the same thing as that, except much easier, and it's digital. This is an example of the student screen. So a teacher would find a passage that they think fits the student and share that. Students can even find their own passages if they'd like. They can go and use tools like you would see in Read and Write if you want to allow that, and they can listen to the passage and look up words in the dictionary. When they're ready, they just click the record button and record themselves reading it. And when that's done, they hit that they're finished. They can retry it if they would like. That goes over to the teacher. The teacher has a whole dashboard area to where they can listen to recordings, they can mark progress, they can see progress over time, they can share these things out, they can view these with parents to show progress. So it really is just a reading fluency application that you can use to help improve reading with your student. Kay, I think there's probably some specific uses in Texas that this is good for.
Yes, one of the things that we've seen recently is districts are using Fluency Tutor for TELPAS prep for that speaking and listening part. So we know that the state released the speaking and listening part of that test. The thing they're using Fluency Tutor for is the ability for students to record a response to a prompt, and then either practice listening to it, improving it, peer review, and then sharing that recording back with the teacher for the teacher to work with them on. So they see that as a side benefit as well as the reading fluency that you've described.
Awesome. Thanks, Kay. Very good. It's good to catch a breath as well. I realize that I'm speaking a 1,000 words a minute here trying to get through these things. So hopefully everybody feels comfortable to pop questions in and make sure they ask those here later as well. So I'm going to transition a bit. We've been talking about reading. So you've got the fluency part with Fluency Tutor, and then obviously you have Read and Write for just to help students. Definitely for any students if you're looking at the productivity side of things, but particularly struggling students if they need help with reading and writing. So transitioning over to math, that's where Equatio comes in. So Equatio is really interesting, a little bit of a backstory behind it. Equatio is started years ago, several years ago now, 3 years ago at least, as an add-in for docs and forums, and it was known as GMath. And the creator of GMath, his name was John McGowan, and he was basically a math teacher at an international schools place. Now, he had a good problem at his particular school in that there's a lot of technology. So kids would be walking into the class with their $1,000 MacBook Airs, and you know, they were always sad to come to math, he said, because they had to put their computers away because math was paper and pencil. And so he wanted to change that, and he developed a way to where it'd be really easy to make math in a digital way. So he created digital math, and students responded with digital math, and they were able to use their technology. He came and joined Texthelp 3 or 4 years ago and helped turn that into Equatio. And basically what we did was we made it easier to use, added loads more features, and made it accessible. So now in addition to making digital math, it's now accessible. So it can be read aloud. We got a lot of universal design kind of tools that you can use to create the math and things like that. So I've got a few kind of just slides here that shows you the main features of that. And then I'll pop over real quick and fingers crossed that I can show you a live demo there. So the idea is, if you're familiar, so they're creating math in a digital way is not new, right? If you go out to Wikipedia or if you have an online textbook, you're going to see digital math. It's there, it's on the web, right? But the way that was created was so complicated. Most of the time it was used, authors anyways, and math authors would use what's called LaTeX, or some people call it LaTeX. It's pretty much its own mathematical language that you'd have to know in order to create mathematics. So you can see, for example, if you wanted to create brackets with separators, if you look over at the far right column there, it will show you it'll show you what that would look like, and then the language you would need to know in order to create that. So it was not the easiest thing. You could learn it, but it definitely wasn't the easiest thing to figure out how to do. That's one way, and then the other way are these palette-based editors, and Equatio has some of that if you really want to use the palette-based editor, if that's what you're used to. But these are really complicated to figure out, like how do I get a subscript and superscript, and how am I going to do division and multi-line equations and things like that. They're not straightforward to use at all, and when they're inserted, they're generally inserted as an image, and they're not accessible. So a lot of different things that go into that. So those are some of the things that we wanted to overcome, is just to make it really easy to make digital math. So that's what Equatio does. So Equatio is going to work in Google Docs, it's going to work in Microsoft Word, it's going to work in Google Forms, it's going to work where there's a Windows version, there is a Mac version, obviously the Google Chrome extension. There's even this kind of, I should have had a separate slide on it, but there's something we call Math Space, which is basically just a canvas area, like a whiteboard area that you can go and add shapes and drag them around, things like fraction bars and number lines and things like that. So it's really good with some of your younger learners. But the idea is when you're creating that digital math to put in there, there's 3 core ways that we can do that, in addition to a few other ways with images and things. But one of those is prediction. So you saw Read and Write earlier, and I talked about how using word prediction is important for spelling and writing in general. It's the same thing with math. If you're not sure how to make a square root sign, all you have to know is that square root starts with SQ, and square root would be predicted along with squared and an actual square and all those things. So you can just type like you would talk, and Equatio will pop those items up, and you can click on them and insert them into your editor there. So that's one way. Another way is handwriting. So Equatio includes a really good handwriting recognition tool. So if you can just go and write, in this example, it's got x squared plus 4x and so on, and you can see instantly as you write that, it'll just turn that into digital math that you can then insert into a document or a form or
Left side of the screen. There we go.
Yep.
Jason, we lost you for a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully it's good now. But at any rate, you can write on the left-hand side. It automatically picks it up on the right-hand side. Then you can insert that as digital math there. And so that's the handwriting recognition piece. And again, once that's inserted, that's going to be accessible. It's not just an image. It's going to have alt text behind it. It can be read aloud, those sort of things. And then finally, we have speech input. So you can actually speak math. You can see here on the left-hand side again, you've got the speech, and it will, whatever you say, Equatio will pick it up. It's even got some smart filtering in there. So if you say things that are not math related, it's just not going to pop up at all. So you can use that, and that will type the math for you, and you can then insert it into your doc or form or wherever you need to insert it at. So super quick demo for that. I have my document, aptly named Math Doc, and just need to open Equatio. Oh, I bet I did the same. This is what happens when, oh, there it is. When the product guy with all of the development versions does the demo. Right, so let's give this a second to reload. There we go. So read and write is at the top. You've seen that a moment ago. Equatio is at the bottom. So the main place that we'd go to is the equation editor. And if I were to open that up, here is, like we said before, if I said 4x and I typed SQ, so you see how it's recommending, it's predicting what I may want to say. Let's say I want to put that over 3, I don't know, pi. So I've created math, you know, that's pretty complicated. That'd be a kind of complex thing to figure out how to do. And I did that in like 4 seconds with one finger. And then if I want that into the document, all I have to do is hit insert. And that will pop that right into the document. And it's going to have that alt text behind it. So even though it's an image, if you're using something like read and write, it'll read that out loud. So that's the editor where you would type at, and it has the prediction built in. The LaTeX, if you wanted to know what that looked like in the LaTeX language, that's what it would look like. So if you got some extra time on your hands and you want to learn how to write in LaTeX, there you go. You can do that. There's also a graph editor. Now, if you do much, you know, if you think back to TI-83 or whatever number they're up to now, graphing calculators that well, they used to be more frequently used than they are now, but graphing is still a very common thing. And the top tool for creating graphs on a computer is Desmos. And so rather than creating something from scratch, we've just integrated Desmos into Equatio. So I'm able to open up Desmos, and you see here, this is the graph for what I just typed. But I can clear that out, and you can do all kinds of things in Desmos, and you can use the prediction. I said mx plus b. I can add sliders, and it shows me how, this is the equation for a line, and it shows me how if these things change, that's how the slope of the line changes, those sort of things. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can do very advanced graphing, and once you do this, you would then be able to insert this graph back into your document or into your form or into your math space or anywhere like that. So it's a really, really full-featured math program that you can create all these digital math pieces with. You can then take that, and if you want to go back and change something, you can click on it, edit math. That's just going to pull that right into where you can go and edit math from there. Handwriting recognition, I had mentioned, I don't have a touchscreen here, so this is going to be messy. But if I said 4x squared, I thought that was a t, and to be honest, it does look like a t, but that's okay. I can always go over, click, and edit it very easily. But you see, it does a pretty good job at recommending whatever it is that you're trying to write with the handwriting recognition piece. And last but not least is the speech input. If I were to click record and say something like a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if you saw it, it heard me say things like and say something. Somewhere it got a plus sign in there that I can easily edit out, but it took out pretty much all the other nonsense that I said and only put in the mathematical pieces. And now that it's there, I'm able to insert that in as well. So lots of things that you can do here. As I mentioned, this is going to work in forms, and the math space area that I mentioned, I can get to from the toolbar. So again, math space, if you guys are familiar with like the Promethean boards or smart boards, I remember in the past when I used to be in schools, everybody had a smart board, and there's the smart board software that came with a lot of shapes and things like that. This is very similar. So if I go here and say shapes, I can drag out a triangle and do a Pythagorean theorem type work, or I could go and search for a fraction bar with 5 segments and lay that out. But the idea, and then plus you have all the other tools you had before if you want to make math, if you want to insert math or text or any of those sort of things and change colors and fill colors. There's smart shapes that if you want to fill in certain sections of the bar, all this stuff is here. And from here, once you're done, you can insert it into the document, or you can just create a math space, share that, for example, through Google Classroom. Your students will get a copy of the math space so that they can go in and solve any problems that you've created there and then share that back with you, and you'll be notified. You'll even have your own dashboard, similar to Fluency Tutor, where you'll see all the work that students have been doing. So again, a really full-featured product. When you think about math, it's going to cover all levels from the basics and elementary all the way up to the most complex you can get at in high school or the university setting. Okay, so that is Equatio. Give me just a second to get reorganized here. And that's going to take us over to RIQ. Okay, RIQ. So RIQ is our newest product. It's currently a Chrome extension. There will be a version for Microsoft Word coming soon as well, in addition to a student version that I'll tell you a bit about. As mentioned earlier, Texthelp's been around for a long time. Texthelp has been specifically in the literacy field for a really long time, over 20 years. We work with teachers all over the world, and we're always trying to find what problems do you have and how can we help. We've wanted to do something with writing for a long time. Now in Read and Write, we have things that help with writing. We have a dictionary and word prediction. Even text-to-speech helps with writing. You can write and then listen to it to see how it sounds. But we've always wanted to do more, and we also wanted to do something that helps teachers, not just students in general. RIQ is something that's going to do both. So how we got to that, if I were to start, one thing we heard a lot is when when teachers are assessing student writing, it's time consuming and it's very tedious work. You know, if you score student writing, you have 25 students and you teach 5 classes, that's 125 writings that you're going to have to score, and it's going to be really difficult to put the same amount of effort into document 72 as document 1. That's just the way those kind of things work. We also know that writing is very subjective. This makes it difficult to really know if students are making progress. If I had a student writing in my hands and I were to give it out to 10 different teachers, or if I were to give it out to everyone on this webinar, I would get back that many different scores, because what a person thinks, how good a person thinks writing is very subjective. And because of that, it's really hard for a school, definitely a district, to know, well, are students making progress in writing or not, if everybody's looking at it differently. So RIQ is going to help with those sort of things. Currently, RIQ is a Chrome extension that helps teachers do several things. One, in Google Documents, and I'll show you this in just a moment. I'll do a couple of screenshots and then try to do a live demo. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to help you assess documents. It's going to kind of like check it when you saw check it for students. It's going to look at spelling and grammar and punctuation. It's also going to look at other interesting metrics like how much time a student spent writing, the maturity of the writing, all those sort of things. It's also going to give teachers an easy way to give feedback to students. There's that whole feedback loop that a lot of time it really slows things down, right? A student turns in writing, teachers, it's going to take them a long time to grade all the writing. It's a week, 2 weeks later before students get that back and know the mistakes that they made and be able to make improvements from there. RIQ is going to automate some of that and in general just make it easier to do. There's also rubrics. So there are some standard rubrics that Texthelp has created that goes with the specific genres and grade levels that teachers can just use right out of the box. But if you have your own rubrics, that's no problem. You can create your own custom rubrics and share those out as well. You know, when you think about scoring writing, there's two pieces. There's that kind of the amount of errors, the accuracy. That's the stuff that we can automate mostly. But then there's also the rubric side of it, like how good is it? Because a student could always do a writing and not make any errors, but it's still not a very good writing because it didn't answer the question, right? So you need both of those sides, and RIQ includes both of those. We also have an interesting thing where these metrics, we've had thousands, tens of thousands of documents scored, and from that, we have a national norm set, which has never existed before. So if you want to know how a student's doing compared with their grade level across the nation, you'll be able to look at that and see. You'll also be able to track student progress over time. You know, it's one thing to write scores in a grade book and to see how students are doing there, but to really know, are students writing better? Are they making less errors? Are they using more complex vocabulary? Are they spending more time writing? All those sort of things, you'll be able to track that for each individual student or your class as a whole over time. And really, over time at the district level, you'll be able to track that at the district or school or grade level or any way you want to break that down. So that's one of the things RIQ does. Here's just a quick, simple example. So if you install RIQ from the Chrome Web Store, at the moment, it's only a teacher version, and that's going to change really, really soon. This month, actually, there'll be a student version as well. But the way it'll work for teachers is here I have a document. This is a screenshot of a document, but over to the right, if I have RIQ installed, it just kind of hangs out of the way over in the corner. And then if I toggle it on, it's then going to show me the errors and type of errors that's in that document. So I'll just escape out of here real quick and show you this same document. I have to do the whole full disclosure thing every time. So my daughter wrote this for us. She's now in grade 7. She wrote it, I think, last year. I needed a sample document. So I always have to start these things off with letting you know that these errors weren't errors to start with. You know, I created the errors for demonstration purposes. So I had to sign off with her that I would go over that before I used her sample as a demo here. So anyways, moving on. If I want to show errors, I can turn that on. And what that's going to do is do what you saw there in the image. It's going to underline these. And so if it's yellow, I'm not sure how the color contrast comes through here, but you'll see if I click on that. Oh, it's not popping up for me. Let me just do a refresh to make sure I haven't done something here. There's that. Yeah, okay, sorry. That's I've loaded all these docs before I loaded the extension, so I just had to refresh them all. So here you see that this is just the wrong form of it. Should be there, not there, and you can see it's a grammar error because it's in pink. So you go through and see the types of errors. You really don't have to do anything here. RIQ does all this for you. So that's done. That's easy. It's just that if you see things that RIQ didn't catch for some reason, you can then go in and choose that and mark it as an error. Or if you may see something that was an error, like maybe a proper noun or something, you can go through and actually ignore all of those errors. So you can work through that. It is really good. We've done, so RIQ is always learning. So there's analytics going on that when we miss errors, there's analytics. So it gets better and better and better. There's been over 2,000 rules added in the last few months alone to this. So RIQ continues to get better, but it already is really good. We've done a thing to where when we first started with RIQ, we tested with the errors that RIQ marked versus the errors that teachers marked, because we know every time a teacher would disagree with our error, and we correlate about 97%, which is really good. Teachers don't even correlate over 90% with each other. So to think that we're correlating 97% with teachers was pretty good. So I'm going to go over now to my sidebar. You see all the errors. Over here, it just counts those up. There's 15 spelling errors, 4 grammar errors, 4 punctuation errors. Out of the whole document, the accuracy is 94%, which is probably pretty good. From there, I can select the grade that the student was in. She was in grade 6 at the time. If you have your own rubrics, you would be able to choose them here. If not, you can use one of the built-in ones. You can even skip it if you didn't want to use a rubric. So here is a narrative, we'll say. It got the word count for me. The vocabulary age is like a vocabulary maturity age. It basically looks at every word, and we have a vocabulary maturity index for every word, and we can then assign it for the whole document, so you can see how it's improving over time. And then you also have a time on task that says about how much time the student spent writing. So if I were to continue to the rubric from here, if I were to continue from here, then you see I'm on the grade 6 narrative rubric. It's going to go through focus and organization, plot, narrative techniques, language, and you can expand these if you want to see kind of what the description is for each of those. Over time, you'll get quicker with it, and we'll just be able to go through. Once you start, you need to go through all of them so that you can continue on. So there's focus, organization and plot, narrative techniques, language, and then when I'm finished, I continue. Here it's going to give me a RIQ score. The RIQ score is an indicator that you can learn more about by clicking on it. It basically takes a lot of those things we talked about, the maturity, the time spent writing, a lot of this national norms data, and it puts it in one number for us. So you can take a look at that, but then you'll have that for your class or for each student, in addition to the breakdown of the errors and all the other things. You can enter in some personal feedback here. When you're done, it's also got all the rubric information. When you're done, you can hit save, and it will actually insert an image of that into the document so that when the student comes back, they'll see that. Now, soon a student will have a version of RIQ so they can actually see it in the extension. So that's the extension that you use on a day-to-day basis. But then if you pop over to the dashboard, and you can get to the dashboard in a couple of different ways. You can see there's a little options thing here that you can go to the dashboard, or you can just bookmark the dashboard. The dashboard is going to have all your classrooms. You can create classrooms manually, or you can just integrate with Google Classroom. Here you see I've got these kind of made up classes. Here's ELA 1. And for that class, it kind of tells me the average RIQ score and word count and all those sort of things that make up the RIQ score. I can view the class. If I do that, it's going to tell me all the students in that class. If I click on one of those students, it's going to show me every writing that student ever did, in addition to their average RIQ and rubric scores. I'll turn this off to start. It'll go through and give me, in addition to all their previous writings and all the scores that go along with that, the averages. I can see a graph of their progress here. There's your RIQ score, your vocabulary age, your accuracy. I can even go back then and check that out with national norms. So you can see this student is really making progress. They started around the 50th percentile and then moved up to the 75th percentile. And then the last one they've documented here is getting closer to that 80th or above percentile. You'll see there's a 90th percentile mark. So this student really progressing well. You can do that with the RIQ score, the vocabulary age. They're also doing really well. And then accuracy, you can just check. That's just the percentage of accuracy there over time. So you're going to have all this data at your fingertips that you can look to see how your class is doing, how your school's doing in general. And then also there will be soon an administrator side of this, to where as an administrator, you'll be able to go in and see this sort of data, but at the school level or at the district level for a whole. And it really helps you know how writing's improving. It's also really important if you have a writing initiative going on, you'll know if it's working. You'll be able to log in and immediately see if scores are improving. So this is RIQ. This is the teacher side. This is what's available now. I should mention then where we're heading with this. So popping around here again, just real quick about the student experience. I know we are getting to the top of the hour here. So the student experience that we're working on is different. We've tried to take a novel approach to this. And some of it comes from this nudge theory. If you haven't read the book, it's not new for sure. It's been around for some time. It is interesting. It's all about how you can nudge people to make good decisions without like telling someone to do something, or without hoping they'll just automatically do it on their own. You know, a good example of this is like savings plans. Teachers, for example, there's this kind of national retirement crisis. So a lot of kind of corporate places used to, there was no savings, so nobody had retirement. So then they did a thing to where by default, they automatically had people contribute to retirement. They could not do it if they wanted to, but just by automatically putting a little bit in there, people didn't change it. And now people actually have savings. In education, we've been doing this for some time, because in most states anyways, I'm not sure how it is in Texas, but there's already kind of a teacher's retirement system that you automatically create to, and it just nudges you to make good decisions. A really, really good example of this is a Fitbit. If anyone wears a fitness tracker, I wear one. I actually wear a Fitbit. Many of you probably have Apple Watches. If I've been sitting for too long, it just kind of vibrates and lets me know I may want to get up and take a few steps. If I get 10,000 steps in, it celebrates and lets me know that I've done that and congratulates me. I get little awards and badges every few weeks for hitting some kind of milestone. But do you know what it doesn't do? Like if I sit still for too long and then I go and have a cheeseburger and a milkshake for lunch, it doesn't tell me I'm a bad person. It just really encourages me and nudges me to make good decisions. And we wanted to do something like that with writing. There's already plenty of ways that we tell students what they're not doing well when we're grading. We mark answers wrong all the time. But we wanted to do something that can motivate students to write more and to write better. Because I think most of us would agree one of the keys into writing better is just to write more often. And the more often you do it, the better you can get, especially with a little bit of coaching. So the student version of WriteQ is going to have a few things, and it will be ready very soon. They're going to be able to view the teacher feedback, which is very helpful, and they're going to receive those positive nudges that I talked about. They're going to be immediate, positive, private, just to the student alone. They're going to be able to see details of the rubric and some of their personal analytics to see how they're doing. I know I log into the Fitbit every week or so, or actually I even get an email, and it tells me how I've been progressing and how many days I worked out and how many steps I've climbed and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be the same thing except for writing. Here's an example of what it would look like. So imagine a student comes into WriteQ and it says, let's get started. There's going to be a whole onboarding process that explains to them in 2 or 3 quick screens what it is and what we're tracking. But basically, they're going to have this little watch face, this little mini dashboard called the WriteQ meter. And it's just going to stay tucked away at the bottom of their screen. And it counts bursts. So a writing burst is me writing without pausing for more than 2 seconds. And there's a lot of research behind writing fluency, how much you can write without taking a break. Now, it's totally fine and natural for people to take breaks and think. But if a person is a fluent writer, once they've gathered the idea in their mind, they can usually write that out. If they're really struggling with fluency in writing and spelling and those sort of things, you'll see a lot of pauses, and you won't have as long of bursts. So we'll count the number of bursts and the burst length. We'll track your top burst and your average burst length. We'll also look at keywords that you're writing. So there are lots of academic words, grade level, and just in general that you can type. And when you type one of those words, we'll track it. And we'll track that for you and outline them over time. Teachers will be able to see this as well in the teacher dashboard. So here's the mini dashboard. That's what it would look like. If you want to expand that out, you could just click the little expand option. That's going to give the students a sidebar that's really similar to what the teachers would see. It's going to show them the writing burst and the writing burst for the day. We even do a kind of a content analysis that tells what they're writing about most and give them a word cloud that shows those key academic words that they're using most as well. So that's by the day, but you're going to be able to see that by the week and by the year and all that stuff. You'll keep that progress over time. In addition, there's the feedback screen that I mentioned. So if you finished grading a paper, if a student is in a document and it's not been assessed, this just will be blank. But if you have assessed a document, a student will get a notification and they can come and see all that, the rubric details, the amount of errors, those sort of things. They can see that and your written feedback right within the extension. And last but not least, you can see we still got a little bit of work to do here. This will be kind of in the next update that comes out once the initial release comes. So there'll be badges, and there are things that you can think about. Imagine a student's been writing for a couple of months, and very easily, without thinking about it, they could have written the equivalent of The Hobbit. And imagine getting a badge that says, hey, you've wrote the equivalent of the novel, The Hobbit. So a student that's not used to writing much now sees that they've written a novel pretty much on their own. So all this stuff is coming really soon, super exciting stuff. We've done some test groups, tried it with students, and they're super psyched. It really is kind of addictive when you start messing with it. And so you guys will all have a chance to try this soon enough, and you'll get more information about it post-webinar. So having said that, I'm going to turn this, Kay, back over to you, and we'll go through some of this important pricing information, take a few questions, and then let Kira wrap things up.
Okay, thanks, Jason, so much for all the information. If you'll just go ahead and click to the next slide. What I wanted to cover for you from here is some important information that you may not be aware of on how we discount to districts who have 50,000 students or more. So if you wanted to target 10% of your student population, we would give you special pricing, and we base that off of your K-12 enrollment. So if you purchased more than one product, then we give additional discounts when you purchase 2 or more products. And if you were to be maybe spending some grant funding or some funding that's left over at the end of the year, we would give you discounts when you purchase for multiple years. So how does this work, Jason? If you'll go to the next slide. For Read and Write, for 10% of your student population, for your K-12 population, you can get that for $2.45 per student or per license. And for Equatio and RIQ, it's $2 per student. Next slide, just as a reminder, remember this has to be for 10% of your K-12 enrollment. If you were to decide to purchase 2 or more products, there would be additional discounts on top of that. And if you were to want to consider multiple years. So I'm happy to work with you to learn more, because I know Jason just gave you a really short, simple overview of these products, and you may have a team that you'd like to take a look at more. So at the end of this webinar, when you close out, you're going to get a quick survey, and one of the things that you can do is let us know that you would like more information on one of these products, or you would like a demo on one of these products, etc. So I'm happy to help you learn more about how you might purchase one of the products. And let's go over to Kira and see if we have any questions we need to answer.
Thanks, Kay. Yeah, we did actually have a couple of great questions that came in. So the first one is, are you able to do pilots for any of these products? If so, how specifically would that work? And is there any sort of time restriction associated with the lengths of those pilots? And then what kind of participants would have access to those pilots?
Oh, good questions. We do offer free pilots. So if you are interested in testing out or piloting any of these products, I'm happy to work with you on that. I believe one of the questions was how long. So the pilots can be either 60 or 90-day pilots. Again, those are free. The participants who would have access to such a pilot, you can determine that. It's easiest, in all honesty, on our end and for your tech team, if we just go ahead and turn on your district, and that is what we encourage, because I can say from personal experience, I've had pilots coming close to an end, and another district or another school in the district reached out and said, hey, we'd like to pilot the product, and I'm telling them you're in the middle of a pilot. So we always encourage you to make sure it's well known district-wide that the pilot would be available, so that everyone who might have interest goes ahead and participates as they wish. Did I cover all those questions? There were several there, Kira.
You did. Thanks, Kay. So the next question we have is, what kind of training resources are available, and are any of these free, or are these something that we would have to pay for?
We do have on YouTube a Texthelp channel. So if you just go to YouTube, Texthelp, and type in any of these products that we've talked about today, you'll find really short videos. We've done a great job of doing a quick overview of the product. You may even hear Jason's voice on some of these videos. And then a lot of them are there by button, like for example, Read and Write. How did he use the check it button, or how did he use the vocab list builder? How did he do that? And those videos are really short, like 2, 3, 4 minutes. We also have for our customers a training portal that they can take access to once they come on board with us. And again, I'm happy to help them learn more and get more information to share with others in the district that might have interest in one of the products.
Perfect. Thank you. And so the next question is, do any of these products work in an LMS system, something like Canvas?
Jason, I'll let you address it since it's a product-related question.
Yeah, they do. So Equatio actually has a Canvas add-in that you can use that works quite well. And Read and Write will also work in Canvas because Canvas is mostly HTML web content. It'll work there. Also some interesting updates that'll even make it a better integration. And so this isn't released yet, but we have some exciting things coming soon for Schoology as well. So.
Thanks, Jason. And the last question that we have here is, are students able to access these products from their accounts at home?
Yep, Kay, you can chime in on that, but I mean, I'll say yes, they can. The way we do logins is you sign in with your district email. So assuming you use a Google or Microsoft account, whenever students go home, they can open up a computer, sign in with that account, and use it just like they're at school. So no problem with that. Kay, I don't know if you have anything there to add.
No, I always just say if you go on vacation and you go to an internet cafe in Paris and you log into your Google account there, you would see Read and Write just like you would at school. So it would follow the student around to grandma's or Aunt Judy's after school or on the weekend as well.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. So that was the rest of our questions. But before we sign off, I'd like to congratulate the winner of our TCEA Conference Pass giveaway. And today's winner is Kathy Stewart. Congratulations. I'll be in touch soon after the webinar to work out the details of your registration for the conference. And lastly, I'd just like to say a big thank you to both Kay and Jason for your presentation today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Stay tuned for the post-webinar survey that Kay had mentioned and the follow-up email with the webinar resources as well as the recording. And I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kira. Thank you, Jason. Bye, y'all.
See you guys.